this is a short video just showing the max patch that I've created. It was for an artistic installation at the Pyramid Art Centre in Warrington between mid-July and September 2016. The piece was called Within Out, and it was part of a wider exhibition called Manifold. What's going on with this patch is that it is taking triggers from PIR sensors in 6 sonic hemispheres. The hemispheres have a transducer attached to them that plays sounds, and a PIR sensor that senses a participant going under the hemisphere. What happens with the patch is that here on the left hand side, it's listening via an Arduino for each of the sensors to be triggered, and that's they're coming in from the serial port. I'm going to make a little video showing what's going on with the Arduino, but this is the kind of the max-msp end. So you set this metro running, and the value actually comes in here. Now what happens then is each hemisphere has a value meaning off and a value meaning on. So for example, hemisphere 1 is looking for a 0 or a 1. If it gets a 1, then that will trigger a sound, which is a side up here. I'll show that in a minute. So that plays a file, which means fade in, a sound file, and 0 means stop playing a file, i.e. fade out. Now actually with the sounds up here within each hemisphere, the sounds are playing all the time, but what this is doing is just going to an envelope that fades the sound in and out. So hemisphere 1 is looking for a 0 and a 1, hemisphere 2 a 2 and a 3. So if it gets a 2, it knows that hemisphere 2 is off. If it gets a 3, it's been triggered, so therefore start the sound file playing or fade the sound file in. As well as that, OSC commands are being sent to Resolume projection mapping software. There is a little subroutine here which is essentially just a fade in and a fade out. Again, it's on a change thing, so what happens with a change is it only gets a bang, or it only does something when it gets a different value. So what you find with the sensor is it'll repeatedly set off and send ones like this, 1 1 1 1 1, you know, and we don't want that to happen, so it only sends a signal if the value has changed. It's the same here, but what happens is this is the thing that fades it in and out. So it fades in over 2 seconds, or it fades out over 2 seconds. And then this bit here sends a command to Resolume. So it's basically the opacity of a channel in Resolume. So layer 1 tells it to change the opacity, or layer 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can have 6 different videos running, and each hemisphere is running a separate video layer. This is sent via the port value. So you set this port up as 127001 essentially in Resolume on 7000 port. So you just set that up within Resolume, so it then gets that value. You can actually send information back, but at the moment we're just sending information to Resolume. Up here is where the sounds are. So what goes on with this is that you can load a whole bank of sounds. So if you drag your sounds and drop them into this bit, it loads a whole bank of sounds. So what I've done is here, you can see these are all the sounds that are loaded in. I don't know how many there is, and they're oddly labelled. But what happens with the sounds is, once it's loaded the sounds, it starts playing them, but if the envelope is off, then we don't hear the sound. So if I just put the sound card on, you can hear that if I send a trigger now, that's actually playing a sound file. Now, when that sound file finishes, what it does is it loads a new sound file randomly from this whole palette of sounds. So it does that by this thing here. At the end of the sound file, it triggers a bang around to here, and that, as you can hear, is just loading a new sample, which is sample number 1, which is this one here. Sample 2 actually, I think. And again, when that's finished, that'll load the next one. Next one. That's coming quite a deep sound within it. Didn't start instantly. So that's how the sounds work. What's happening with the envelope of sound, so that if you'll hear, if I turn off that sound, I'll just put a sound on that's a bit better. So say you've got this sound, if I press off, you'll hear that faded out quite slowly. The fade for the visuals was a lot quicker, so if I press on again, you can see the visual is already in within about 2 seconds, and then if I fade it out, that's taking a few seconds to fade out. I put that back in, and that's working within this envelope here. I'll turn it off a sec. That's going to file 1, which is this bit here. And what's happening here is it's starting to loop, starting to play a sound file, but it comes in over 2 seconds. So this is an ADSR, attack, decay, sustain and release. So it comes in over 2 seconds, 2000 milliseconds. There's no decay, ADSR, decay or sustain, just a release. So that means it takes 2 seconds for the sound file to come in and 5 seconds for it to go away. So if somebody walks away from it, it just fades a little slower. You can change these values. So again, just listen to that. It should come in after 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then it should go out over 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. This is the presenter version from max-msp. So I've just tidied it up a little bit, but it's exactly the same. That's where you drop your files. You can trigger them to change with this. You can just test that it's working by pressing play. It's not working because I've not put the sound on. So I'll just load a new file. Yeah, that's channel 1 on and off, and it's just showing you what the value is that's going into Resolume as well in terms of the fade, and you can set your host up there and your port number, and you can also turn the serial port on and you can monitor the value that's coming in.